Today is Monday, August 11th, 2025. This is Quick Start from CBN News. I'm Dan Andros. A shocking anti-Semitic attack in Missouri. We'll have that top story and more on today's podcast, where we bring you news from a Christian perspective. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a rating. We'd greatly appreciate it if you would do that. You can email us your thoughts as well. quickstartpodcast@cbn.org. That's our email address. quickstartpodcast@cbn.org. As always, we have a lot to get to on the podcast today. On the focus story, 3 vehicles were set ablaze and death to the IDF was reportedly spray painted outside the home of an American IDF veteran. CBN's Billy Hallowell and Goins Phillips will have more on the focus story. And on the main thing, a school is under fire after allegedly helping to arrange abortions without parental consent. Make sure you subscribe to all of our CBN News podcasts if you haven't done so already. Also, you can check out our brand new Substack, faithwire.substack.com. We are growing a community of believers there to pray along through the news of the day. Make sure that we are doing our due diligence as Christians care about the things going on in this amazing world He has made. And with that, we are going to head to the news in 90 seconds. Millions are under flood alerts as relentless storms continue to pound the Midwest, shutting down roads, canceling flights, forcing evacuations, and causing general havoc around some areas of the country right now. Milwaukee has seen up to 14 inches of rain, prompting a county-wide state of emergency. The fire department fielded more than 600 calls for water rescues, gas leaks, and power outages. The Wisconsin State Fair's final day was canceled after floodwaters swamped the fairgrounds, while the Brewers warned fans that parking at American Family Field couldn't be guaranteed. Nearly 14,000 remain without power in Wisconsin, and officials are urging residents to stay off flooded roads, with more heavy rain expected into tonight. And is your car spying on you? Modern vehicles are packed with sensors and tech that track far more than your driving habits, storing everything from your location to personal details unrelated to driving. Experts are calling them a privacy nightmare. Data from new cars can be worth billions. Some manufacturers, like Nissan, in past privacy statements have claimed the right to collect sensitive information, including religious beliefs and citizenship status. Those are just some of today's top headlines. You can read that story from Dale Hurd and much more over at cbnnews.com. And that is obviously something that all of us should be concerned about, is our digital footprint. What is our information being used for? Where are they collecting information? A lot of times it's just the IP or metadata, which doesn't necessarily give your name specifically tied to the information, but it is connected, and it is something that Dale reported on here in depth and has reported on before, and something that we all need to be mindful as Christians is, what information are we giving the government? Because it may be anonymous, it may be metadata for now, but if they wanted to turn that against you for some reason, any reason, shape, or form, they could do that, and they could tie it all together. So the claims of it being just innocuous information is something that you have to take with a grain of salt from the government, because it is until it isn't. All right, we are going to head to the focus story now, and a chilling anti-Semitic attack in Clayton, Missouri, where 3 vehicles were set on fire and death to the IDF was reportedly spray painted outside the home of an American IDF veteran. Billy and Trey have more on the focus story.
Trey, what do we know about this story?
Yeah, so it seems like the attack was specifically targeting an American citizen who had recently returned home after serving in the IDF, the Israel Defense Forces. So, and in addition to that, like gross anti-Semitic message that was sprayed on the road there, there was another blurred message. We couldn't see exactly what it was. It was blurred, obviously, for protection of identity, that accused the IDF soldier, the veteran, of of being a murderer, which, is indicating obviously a direct threat toward this individual. So, I mean, there's a lot of scary pieces to this story. Nobody was hurt, thankfully, in the immediate incident. But the fact that this level of hatred and this level of targeting was there is enough to shake not only, of course, the victim, but that whole community.
Yeah. And, obviously you've got 3 vehicles that were torched.
Right.
And you have the Jewish Federations of St. Louis. They've put out a statement. They said, "We condemn in the strongest terms the attack on members of our community last night. This is more than vandalism. It is a hateful act of intimidation and only the latest example of what happens when anti-Semitic and anti-Israel rhetoric are normalized." We've also seen responses from others in, government. I'll read one of those responses in a minute. But Trey, we're watching these things happen in America now. They're happening around the world, but this conflict with Israel and in Gaza, it is really reverberating throughout the entire world. And this anti-Semitism is completely horrific, and it's on the rise.
Yeah, it's not only on the rise generally, but it's also on the rise in some facets of the right. Now, they still that still remains a minority. The vast majority of the right is pro-Israel and doesn't spew this kind of anti-Semitic stuff. But we are seeing this kind of new right where some of this is happening, and it's not going away. I was just looking at a Brookings Institute study that they partnered with The Economist and YouGov, the survey that just came out that shows anti-Semitism, or I shouldn't say anti-Semitism, anti-Israel sentiment, more specifically, is on the rise, not just among Democrats, but also among young people writ large. And I think that's part of the reason why we're seeing this, is people are struggling to parse the difference between saying, I disagree with some of the policy positions of Israel, and anti-Semitism. We're seeing that bleed together in really disturbing ways.
Yeah, here's the other thing. You're going to see the U.S. government at a federal level really tackle some of this, at least through rhetoric. They're saying they're going to much more diligently than they claim other administrations have. The Department of Justice Task Force to Combat Anti-Semitism, Leo Terrell, he put out a statement. He's the guy who leads that government body. He said, anyone who's going to make an attack on Jewish Americans, you can expect criminal charges. He later took to X, where he said the Trump administration was going to ensure that those who were committing any sort of anti-Semitic hate crimes, that they will be brought to justice with zero tolerance. They are not going to tolerate what he called Jew hatred in America. So this is, it's horrific to think that people have to live with this sort of fear. Here's somebody who went and served in the IDF. And even if somebody disagrees with what the IDF is doing or what Israel is doing, to go after somebody and to go after a family in such a horrific way, torching vehicles, spray painting a message about death to the IDF. What in the world are we coming to as a society where this is the sort of thing that is apparently seen as a positive? These people obviously thought this was the right thing to do.
Yeah, well, and this disgusting, grotesque anti-Semitism, we should give context to this. A lot of this has been going on, of course, for many, many, many years, but it's since the October 7th, 2023 attack that here at home, it has really skyrocketed. So FBI data, just to give a little bit more background here, show that a record number of 1,938 anti-Jewish hate crimes occurred in 2024. That comprises 16% of all hate crimes and nearly 70% of all religiously motivated hate crimes. So the Jewish community is certainly facing a disproportionate number of the crimes that are fueled by hatred. And also one other thing that I want to reference, Billy, before we go on to the next thing, is this Economist and YouGov survey. It found that among young voters, 45% believe that Israel is committing genocide against Palestinians. So much of this is fueled by complete mis and disinformation.
Yeah. And, I'll also add here, I think this is important. An Anti-Defamation League representative, they commented on something here that I think is interesting. They said that it's dangerous, this whole globalize the intifada, the statement that is often put out there, calling people to arms across the globe, that examples like this, people see this as, oh, this is an example of living that out, the terrifying nature of living that out against the Jewish people. And to your point, obviously October 7th, we've also seen hatred of Jewish people throughout history. We see it in scripture. We see it with Esther and Haman and what happened in that story. It is a repeated evil. We saw it with Adolf Hitler. And this is just the latest iteration of what Hamas has done, the manipulation, the death, the violence, and the chaos. And to see that pour over into our country is very sad. And we'll continue to cover this as the story unfolds. Any final thoughts, Trey?
Yeah, I think, my one final thought on this is we've covered so much of it, Billy, but I think it's important to continue to raise our voices. As Christians, we have a responsibility to call out any evil against any human being, because that's another image bearer, right? That's a fellow image bearer, a human being created in God's image, and they're not deserving of this kind of evil and violence carried out against them. But certainly, as you laid out just briefly there with scripture, with the Jewish people, I think that so much of this is rooted in a spiritual blindness and a spiritual darkness that has, really grabbed our culture. And it's critical that we use our voices, whatever platform we have, whether that's conversations with friends and family or using YouTube and social media like we are here, whatever it is. It's important to call out and condemn this evil whenever and wherever we see it.
All right, appreciate you guys breaking that down on the podcast today. And that's going to lead us to the main thing now. And last week, Fairfax County Public Schools launched an investigation into claims that school employees arranged abortions for 2 students while bypassing parental consent. Kelsey Pritchard with the Susan B. Anthony List joined Madison Seals to discuss.
Kelsey, the debate around parental rights in schools has remained pretty prominent in the news since 2020, when COVID-19 lockdowns started exposing a lot of what was going on behind school doors. But this story really brings it back into the headlines in a really disturbing way. Can you summarize what these Northern Virginia students are claiming happened to them?
Yeah, this horrible story has emerged from Fairfax High School in Virginia, where 2 girls were pregnant and a school social worker coerced them and then took them to an abortion facility to get an abortion. The principal allegedly knew about it and was using school funds to pay for the abortions. One of the girls was 5 months pregnant, and she fled the scene when she got there. And then all of this happened, as it's reported, without any parental consent or parental notification. So they went completely around the legal guardians to take these girls to get abortions. And in one case, the girl didn't want the abortion and was being pushed to abort her child.
Wow. So this faculty member took the students, more than one, to this abortion clinic and paid for the abortion themselves and then kept it from the students' parents, which is in direct violation of Virginia's parental notification law, right?
Absolutely. So parents have to be involved in Virginia. Girls, minors can't just show up and get an abortion without mom or dad knowing and being involved. So that part of the story is concerning. It's also concerning because it sounds like it's possible that these funds could have come from the school itself. It could have come from taxpayers. So not only were taxpayer dollars paying for that school and paying the salaries of those people who were coercing these young girls for abortion, but it could also be that they were using school money to pay for the abortions.
Yeah, the fact that these students confided in a teacher about what happened to them shows what we know to be true already about abortion and its long-term mental effects, in addition to the physical trauma. But this is about more than whether abortion is right or wrong. What do you see as the main concerns here?
Yeah, I think the main concern is that we have a lot of these states where they've started to take the parental consent, parental notification off the books as a result from lawsuits from Planned Parenthood, as a result from ballot measures. And now Virginia has a very similar ballot measure, pro-abortion ballot measure, in front of them. And if the Democrats get a majority in the legislature in this election, they're going to pass that amendment and eliminate parental consent. And so it's going to be a lot easier for schools to do this kind of thing and get away with this kind of thing. And of course, any sort of abuser or coercer in a girl's life, for them to take a girl to an abortion facility, push them into getting an abortion, and then mom and dad never know.
Yeah, it's definitely very concerning. And I've seen multiple different headlines talking about how this does seem to be state-led coercion of children. And it is, even though they're high schoolers, these are children we're talking about. I know you mentioned one was 17. It's really disturbing. And when you talked about the election, I think that's another important element of this, that even though these abortions supposedly happened back in 2021, this is all coming out during a gubernatorial election year, which is significant because the parental rights issue is one of, if not the main driver behind Governor Youngkin's victory. So what kind of impact do you think that this will have on the governor's race this fall? And how should public officials be responding to this situation now?
Yeah, they need to take it very, very seriously, and there need to be investigations. The school says they're looking into it. It also just broke this morning that the school board, they knew about this before it broke, which is kind of contrary to the statements they put out there. So that's very concerning. But yes, it's relevant to the governor's race. It's relevant to the legislative races in Virginia, especially given that the Democrat candidate for governor came out and was asked if she supports parental consent on the issue of abortion, and she completely dodged the question, which tells us she does not support parental consent. And we have Democrat after Democrat who is running for the House of Delegates who are saying that they support this radical abortion amendment that would eliminate parental consent. Now, the amendment would not actually need the governor's signature. And so what is most crucial for this amendment not to pass is that we get at least a Republican majority in the House or the Senate. And Susan B. Anthony, we've actually been on the ground in Virginia canvassing for House of Delegates races because it looks like the House of Delegates is a chamber that we can flip to be Republican. It's really achievable. So it's really important that people show up to vote in November and realize the impact the vote will have on abortion and on your rights as a parent.
Yeah, it's important that public officials step in because this is an issue that people care about. And like you said, parents are looking to see how these school officials and elected officials are going to respond.
Absolutely. And I mean, think about these girls. They are not old enough to take Tylenol by themselves at school. They are not old enough to go get their ears pierced on their own. And yet the Democrats think we should strip away parental consent and girls should just be able to walk in, or abusers should just be able to walk in to an abortion facility and push an abortion on a girl. And so this is awful that, this allegedly happened. What a terrible, awful thing for Virginia, for our entire country. It's just horrifying as a parent to find this story out there, but we need to do what we can so this doesn't happen again in our schools and beyond that, so that abusers can't just traffic our girls to abortion facilities.
All right, appreciate that story there very much, Madison. And that's going to leave us with time on the podcast today for one last thing, and we're going to look at Psalm 34:18. The Lord is near to the brokenhearted and saves the crushed in spirit. And I think this is just another great psalm. It just shows you the character and the values and how our God is and how he loves us. And when we're hurting, when we're down, when we're going through tragedy, when we're suffering, God is near because he cares. And that's where we're going to leave it on today's edition of the Quick Start Podcast. As always, make sure you're getting on over to cbnnews.com and faithwire.com for more news from a Christian perspective. And join our Faithwire Substack, faithwire.substack.com. Pray with us through the news of the day there. God bless. See you back here tomorrow.